Three, two, one, and we're back. It's Sunday, March the 7th. Oh my gosh, I can't believe my birthday's in 2 days.
I know.
As I looked at the calendar on my iMac, I just realized it's in 2 days. I've completely, basically forgotten about it. I don't think, though I truthfully think, like people sometimes as they are our age, or I should say my age, because you're
Especially your age.
because you've decided you're officially 35.
That's right.
Okay, good. I'll go
I
with
tried that out on somebody the other night, too.
Well, and they
Totally believable.
You look 35.
Which I appreciate.
Well,
Yes.
you do.
With
You
makeup
really do.
on anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I'm not saying who cares about how I look, frankly. I mean, I'm not really concerned whether I look my age or not. That doesn't really enter into my mind. But the bottom line is that it is kind of funny that sometimes people will bemoan growing older. And the first thought that pops in my mind every time I see even men or women not wanting to share their age, I'm like, dude, it is so much better than the alternative, right?
It is.
Another birthday is a reason to celebrate, because it's better than, not having another birthday to celebrate. So from my perspective, I appreciate appreciate all the happy birthdays that I know are coming our way. Last year, you and I had like over 1,000 between Facebook
awesome.
and Instagram.
Yeah.
You liked all that?
Oh, I think it's nice. I like to celebrate their birthdays, and it's just all, it's fun.
Did you show gratitude to all the people?
Well, maybe not all,
I know.
however many.
I got
as much as
overwhelmed.
possible, a few group thank yous. But I found something interesting because I met a new friend, and I tried Zoe. Zoe has been convinced that I'm 35, and I found that to her, 35 and my actual age, all equal. Oh my gosh, how can you be that old to her?
Well, she's 7.
It doesn't matter. I could say 20, and she'd think that I was super old.
We forgot our disclaimer.
Oh, sorry.
We
Sunday
forgot
show.
It's a Sunday show. We're going to talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about.
Apparently.
Apparently. And we're going to talk about whatever comes to our mind. So this is, it's funny. We forgot to disclaim it. So this is the Sunday podcast. This is Real Estate Coaching Radio. This is Tim and Julie Harris. But on Sunday, Julie and I intentionally have, for years, we've been married for 30 years this year. Someone could do some quick math and figure out how old you are now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We may have gotten married when Julie was 20, for those of you who are quick at math.
Yeah.
In any event,
Moving along.
The point of the Sunday podcast is it's us taking what we've been doing on Sunday for the past basically 30 years consistently, where we defrag from the previous week, and then we look forward to what we're going to accomplish the following week. And what Julie and I will typically do is we'll ask each other, what are the 3 to 5 things that you're going to accomplish this week that you're going to be, most proud of having accomplished in the next 7 days. That's how we've benchmarked our accountability towards each other for the last 30 years. We've done that very consistently as well. And the way Julie and I set our goals, or we set our short-term goals, is that we focus on the things that are going to have the most impact. Now, sometimes you get sucked into the vortex of, servicing your business and such like that. But for the most part, we always are trying to keep ourselves focused on the, our 5-foot world. Those are the practical, opportunistic things that are immediately surrounding us. Like, I've got scheduled to a whole bunch of Zoom meetings this week and just different podcasts and whatnot. And Julie, the same thing. But don't allow those immediate 5-foot world things to take us off the horizon. So when we're holding each other accountable to the 3 to 5 things we're going to do the following week, those are the questions. Like, what is it that you're working towards? What are the 3 to 5 things that are going to be horizon and 5-foot world type goals? And that works for us, and maybe it'll work for you as well. It's a great way to always remind people to stay opportunistic, stay short-term focused. That way you have money that's coming in and not letting things get by you. Because if you're focused too long range, you're not going to be, obviously your mind's going to focus down range by 90 days, 120 days, 2 years, 5 years, and you're going to lose what's right in front of you. So it's a balance, but you can figure it out, because at the end of the day, when you do allow your mind to focus on just 3 to 5 most important things, they're going to move the needle for you the most, and make money for you the most, put you in a position to help the most people. Those types of questions will really tune in your mind to really where your focus should be. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And, we talk about how to marry all of those thoughts together. And we talk about things like doing a little brain dump at night and writing down all the stuff that's floating around in your brain. That doesn't have to be congruent. Maybe one thing is personal and the next thing is business. And the next thing is change the oil in your car, So that way you at least do the brain dump. You get it out of your head. And then the next thing you do is you go through that list and you decide what is mission critical and what's not. Well, how do you decide? Business-wise, is it dollar productive? Is it going to lead to profitability? Yes or no? Maybe it doesn't need to be done. There will be some things on your brain dump list that you simply cross out as unimportant, other things that are delegatable to somebody else and not dependent on you, and then you'll end up with your 3 to 5 things.
Let's tell them how we organize that. Julie and I have a dry erase board. Big surprise for those of you guys who've known us for decades. We love our dry erase boards. And I'm looking at it right now. Julie just turned around to look at it. She's reminding herself of the things that are on her to-do list.
Turning my back on it on Sunday.
Exactly.
Walk away.
Well, we don't need to read them what's on our
No.
But what's on our dry erase board are all the really short-term and long-term type projects. And then Julie and I split the specific activities based on our really our roles in our companies and our skill sets, really. And some of them, as Julie said, are personal and some of them are business. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and most of them are business, but there's some personal stuff on there as well.
Yeah.
Julie, generally speaking, will square away the personal stuff. And then what we do every single week is we take it depends. These are all mostly big, long, downrange projects, but we'll take maybe 1 or 2 of those big, long-range projects, and we'll try to knock it out that particular week. And that's the way we do it. Again, I'm looking at this list, reminding myself if I've forgotten about anything, and I have not. Everything's on task. And so then in front of me, what I'll do at the end of the day, what Julie said, is I'll just do a brain dump. Anything that came up that day, and I'll write things down throughout the day that come up. And then at the end of the day, I'll scratch. Mostly it's removing things from that made the list during the day because it turns out they weren't important. I may have thought they were important at the time, but they're not important. And the things that remain are my short-term, practical, tactical things, and those stay on my short list, which is on a yellow legal pad. So downrange items and some short-range items, but mostly long-range items are on the dry erase board. Julie and I split those tasks. And short-range items stay on my yellow pad. Now, Julie and I have also in our coaching company and our other companies, we have staff. We have property managers in our management business. We have people that work with us on the lending side. We have people that work with us on the, obviously in the coaching company. The coaching company has the largest staff. So we have then people that, for example, if there's some, banking or accounting or procedural thing that needs nailed down, we're going to have Tom take care of that because that's his area of specialty. If it's a marketing thing that needs done, something that's a real high-level creative designer type thing, we have Trevor that will take care of that. And then on down the road with other staff members. But primarily where we've always, how we've always kept each other accountable, frankly, is by doing exactly what we just said. And the other thing that's the mixed blessing of really doing a Sunday defrag like we are doing now, and also the way we organize our thoughts and our goals, is that Julie and I are always then setting unified goals. We're always working off the same goal list. There's not like, and I've seen this in coaching client. You've seen this mostly because,
Sure.
There's a lot of times where the husband and the wife, if the couples thing is really a challenge, but it doesn't have to be couples. It could just be a literal business partners.
Yeah, lots of that where they're literally not on the same page.
Where they have different goals.
Yeah,
and often conflict.
Sometimes, you should have your own personal goals, right? Like my physical goal is not the same as your physical goal. You're 50% bigger than me. It shouldn't be, right?
50%? Yeah, I am 50% bigger than you.
Yeah, so
wow.
We're probably not going to be lifting the same amount of weight, but
and yet in some cases we do.
Sometimes I can catch up. But,
Yes.
So, obviously you can have your own personal goals, but as far as working together in business, I think you really do have to keep the train on the tracks and have some mutual things like, the magic number of listings to maintain is an obvious one that both parties or multiple parties can be focused on, right? So if you all know what the same goal is, you're all rowing the same direction in the same ship. Versus somebody who maybe, they want to go off on some creative angle and be marketing and not in sales, and that maybe drives the sales into the ground.
But so I don't want to really go too far down this.
Just as an example.
No, it's a good one. But this is an example. When you see conflict in partnerships and couples trying to work together, most often it's because, frankly, I almost always see it this way. The man is too focused on the ego gratification of being creative.
Yeah.
Of being a business owner.
Reinventing the wheel.
Of being an entrepreneur.
Path.
And he's going to come up with a new great idea. It's very rarely women that act like
true.
that. Women are mostly, frankly, and oftentimes, let me think if this is true before I say it. I would say once women learn sales skills, I found this to be true, that they ultimately are the same, if not better, at building businesses than men because they are less prone to flights of ego fancy.
I think that's generally true.
I think it's true too.
Yeah.
Because women, generally speaking, these are the biggest of generalizations ever, but they're most attached to, they are, I think a lot of times men are easily seduced by their egos, honestly. And they'll get, I'm building a team. I'm going to get more awards. I'm going to sell more houses, and they lose sight of profit. Whereas I think a lot of women are naturally more inclined to want to have a higher, their standards with regards to financial security are higher than some men. A lot of men, because of business immaturity, frankly, take a lot of pride in their risk tolerance.
Right, and their ego tells them they can handle it and they can put it back together again if they had to.
Exactly.
And some of them actually have a pattern of doing that.
Yep.
Because that's how they find their motivation. And I think that comes with business maturity as well.
Right, but they find their motivation to drill down on what Julie just said because and you guys, maybe you're like this. You'll have these cycles where you have success then failure. And you often will attract other people that have similar cycles, and you read books and you're attracted to sort of this, myth that you have to, you can only have short-term bouts of success with long-term bouts of suffering and failure. And it's the whole, America, the American... Well, I'll just go to what Warren Buffett said. Warren Buffett said, why do Americans love to celebrate the comeback story? I love to celebrate the business person that built it, never lost it, kept building it.
Right.
They never lost it.
The continue built story. Yeah.
Right. But in real estate, it's always about, I had a really good year 127 years ago.
Right.
And now I'm just basically digging my way back. And then, but this happens in life in general.
It's kind of celebrated, though.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, think about
a lot of movies are made about that.
When was the last time you actually saw a movie about somebody, frankly, I mean, this is gratuitous, but like us, who built something, who didn't lose it all, who kept on building it every single year? We think of one.
Think about that.
None.
The only ones that come to mind, honestly, this is a weird thought.
It's because the comeback story is romanticized.
Well, sure. And, there's more drama to it, certainly. And there's nothing against that. Good job coming back. But my mind went to a lot of the actors and business owners that didn't really get their start until they were like mid-40s to 50s and then had their trajectory from there. It's like they had this kind of delayed launch and then rode it out to the end.
Yeah, I would say that's true. But ultimately, though, especially with the just really ridiculous amount of information, and truthfully, very little of it's good information. I'm guessing less than 5% of anything you read online is really useful. Most of it's just basically thinly disguised marketing messages trying to sell you something, especially in applications like Clubhouse. I mean, there's so many just different little, people that purport to be experts or gurus, and all they are really is just trying to create sales funnels and, make themselves sound like they're some sort of guru. And if we talk about this a lot, so I'm not going to spend much time talking about it. But when you look at the 3 to 5% of really good content that's out there, some of it's fantastic. I was listening to something on Clubhouse this morning, and I was like taking notes. I was entering into this Clubhouse just because I kind of liked the topic or the idea or something. And it was about peak performers or something. I don't even remember. And there was this guy that was this doctor, physiologist, and talking about stuff, most of which I'd heard before, but some of which I'd never heard before, which was just awesome. He was talking about some of the way that addiction is treated, but he was also talking about essentially, genes and just all this interesting stuff, basically. Sure. I wrote a lot of stuff down. I'll talk to you about later as I formulate my thoughts more. But one of the things he said in particular, which I loved, and I did write this down. Hold on. I wrote it down to share with you, is we die from lack of stress. I love that.
That's funny.
Isn't that funny? So that actually is one of the things I want to share with you that I haven't shared with you before. So I want you to think about that because that is so awesome because it's so flippin' true.
And so counter to what so many people try to avoid all the time, every waking hour.
Why exactly? Why is it that people fight so hard to nerf their lives up? As in, surround yourself with soft landing pads and not here in Puerto Rico, by the way. The kids here on their gym sets.
Better be tough, man.
It's OG gym set, man. You might have a couple rusty edges. You definitely are going to have some, bars that aren't quite,
And slides are made of stainless steel, baking in the sun.
That's right.
If you're lucky, you'll wind up in a pool.
The kids quickly learn to basically avoid the hot slides in the hot day.
Oh my God. Well, they do have techniques. I saw them doing it the other day where they were putting water on the slide and they had like an assembly line. One kid would go up with the bucket.
But when we take Zoe back to the mainland and she's riding, you're like walking around on a marshmallow surrounded by other Nerf pads and everything's nerfed up. But isn't that hilarious?
What kind of playground is this? There's no danger in it.
But people have normalized that. That's become a normal way of being. Like, oh my God, we need to take all the hard edges off. We need to remove the stress from our lives.
More survival of the fittest.
But this guy said it obviously very concisely, and we're going to adapt that into our repertoire.
Sure.
But the reality of it is don't you think that's fascinating?
I do. I
at a core educational level?
Well, indeed, at a core educational level. I'll give you an example because part of my end of things is keeping an eye on the Savage Munchkin. Yesterday when she was taking the drawing class, okay, one of these online, OutSchool is great, guys, if you haven't discovered it yet, outschool.com. But she was in a class that was mostly older kids. She's trying to learn how to draw these anime Japanese cartoon characters. And I saw in the course of like 45 minutes, the stress level of her ramping up because she couldn't do something easily. And she loves to be the star of the show. And complete and utter stressed out little kid meltdown. I mean, she was crying for real. Nobody likes my drawing and I'm terrible at this, blah, blah, blah. And then she turned that into concentration and drilled down and got really good at it. And by the end of the class, she had a nice little accolade, little victory dance with the teacher. But why I bring that up is that was a very clear demonstration of like educational stress and anxiety, but growth. And boy, did she seem pretty alive during that class. She was going through virtually every emotion a human can have.
I know. I watched it too.
And that does make a person grow.
I looked. She was doing this in the dining room. I looked in the dining room, and she was crying, and she was frustrated, and she was angry, and she's just the cutest little thing too. And so those of you who have little kids, have had a lot of little kids. This is our first one, right? So this is all new experience for us. We share with you guys on this podcast, especially on Sunday. And then, like she
wouldn't give up.
She thinks, because mostly we love having fun with her with regards to her imagination. So she thinks she's an elf. I mean, like a literal elf. Mm-hmm. And she thinks Julie and I are elves too, and we have fun with her that way. Honestly, it's just to stimulate her mentally and emotionally, and it's so much fun. She's such a cutie. But anyway, so I looked in the dining room, and I saw her, and I saw how frustrated she was, and I said, "Zoe, elves don't give up." I said, "Zoe, elves don't give up." And I told her that. I looked at her. And then she just gave me this real resolute look. And then she went back to it reluctantly. And then it was probably about 10 minutes later. She was so proud of herself. Yep. She drew this anime of this lady sitting on a cloud.
Yeah, it was
amazing. Awesome. And then, but to the point that basically we die without stress when we were going on the bike ride yesterday.
That's another good example.
So we were going on a bike ride. I'm teaching her how to ride a bike. Yes, I know she should have learned last year, but we were moving. And there's a pandemic. I've got a lot of excuses.
Earthquakes the year before.
But the bottom line is Zoe didn't want to actually put in the effort. Every time you'd put her on a bike, she'd start to complain. It's too hard. I can't balance.
I can't go uphill. I can't go sideways.
Right. And so we bought her a bike, and I'm learning. This is her third bike, by the way. I mean, there's 2 bikes sitting at home, or sitting back in Texas in a barn that I said at home. This is home now. But the moral of the story is this is the third try with Zoe and biking. And so Julie and my mom lives with us. They were trailing us on this long walk, and I got ahead of them because I know if Zoe falls off of her bike and hurts herself, she's just going to run to mom, and basically the lesson's going to be over because she's going to start
go into baby mode.
She's going to go into baby mode, exactly. But they were far enough away, and indeed, she fell off her bike and she skinned her knee, and she started to cry and started to go through this baby routine. I set the bike up. I picked her up, put her back on her bike. I said, "Zoe, elves don't quit." And then I made her, basically I gave her a little shove, and then she started out, and guess what? 5 minutes later, she was bouncing on that bike. So the moral of the story is we grow from stress, and yet and you know that innately because at one point you had to learn how to ride a bike.
Sure.
I have a literal scar on my right leg or left leg from, or is it right leg? No,
probably both.
Right leg, yeah.
I know I have 2.
From learning how to ride a bike, And exactly. So does Julie. So you do too. All of you listeners, the same. And so when you were a kid, you knew that you grew from stress. You knew you grew from skinned knees. You knew you grew from having your block punched off and not being the smartest kid in the room just because. You knew that you had to struggle. You knew you had to go through pain. And at what point in your life did you stop that? At what point in your life did you say you had enough? At what point in your life did you say, "Well, I'm done reading books. I'm done feeling uncomfortable. Yeah. Now my life is about getting to comfort mode as fast as I can."
People get to a certain level that must be comfortable enough that they stop taking that risk. I was just thinking while you're talking about Zoe's Wipeout, there's a Band-Aid brand that we have, which is like nice fabric Band-Aids. And the reason I like it is because it doesn't say Band-Aid. It says Courage Badge. So awesome. I just think that's a nice little mental reminder, that it's okay to make mistakes. And it's okay to wipe out. You get yourself together. You put yourself back.
Let's use us as an example. Yeah. So our birthdays are this week, and Julie and I bought us. I'm going to look out the window and see what they are. We bought ourselves some Tesla e-bikes, but these are sort of a hybrid between. What is yours? What is this, Julie? Let me look so I can give them an actual case someone wants to Google it. A Tesla X160 and a Tesla, or I'm sorry, Tesla. Segway. Did I say
Segway,
Tesla?
you did.
Sorry.
You're thinking electric.
I know, exactly. See how Elon Musk has taken
in your
over
brain.
He's branded electric to be
I know.
Tesla. It's awesome, isn't it? Anyway, so it's a Segway X160 and a Segway X260. So yes, we bought ourselves, you guys should Google those. We bought ourselves
crazy.
these dirt bike things that are legitimately fast. Now, just for the record, Julie and I have no motorcycle experience. And we don't need to register these, so we can just drive them around where we live here in the Ritz-Carlton in Puerto Rico.
But they're basically a hybrid bicycle motorcycle.
That can go really freaking fast.
Yeah, which I didn't realize when you ordered them. So
you didn't know they were that fast?
Maybe I'm a little bit less risk than you, but they are fun. I mean, I had to. Today's day 2, so I'm still kind of getting over my fear of it.
You're about to tell what I was going to share with them.
Yeah.
Because you didn't want to ride it the first day because you were afraid of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't realize till we were putting it together. And it's funny, yesterday at my first, foray out, as we were going over bumps and I'm trying not to kill myself and, hoping my helmet's tight enough, I was thinking that, isn't it interesting to ride the bike? I was thinking about our spokes in the wheel analogy that, when you put your own bike together, you're kind of owning it in a different way.
Right.
Your accountability is different than when you just, yes, it was partially put together. We didn't put together a motorcycle, but we did have to do a lot.
We had to assemble probably like 30% of them.
Yeah, we had to actually, read instructions and make sure we used all the parts.
Right.
But as I was riding over those bumps, trying to control something that weighs probably close to what I weigh, and I don't want to fall on it or hurt it or have it hurt me, I was thinking, I hope that we put our spokes in the wheel together, right? Which is ironic considering what we teach during the week. But,
well, so let's talk about that experience because actually this doctor that was on this clubhouse is actually drilling down on a couple of subpoints, but you're kind of meandering about it in the Tim and Julie way, which is great. So like when we were riding yesterday, because it was just fantastic. We rode on the beach. Fun. We rode through the jungle. We rode off-road, on-road. You did great. I mean, you drove like a grandma, but I mean,
on a motorcycle.
On a motorcycle, but whatever. You were fine.
I'm sure I look like Kermit with a helmet.
Yeah, well, but
right.
Moral of the story is you did it. And the moral of the story is I did it. And the moral of the story is we were learning as we were doing it. It's not like it's not that
There's
difficult.
There's nothing passive about it, though.
And we were present while we were doing it.
Yeah.
And it forced us to be present with what we're doing out of fear of hurting ourselves, fear of hurting someone that might be around us, all those types of things. And it keeps you present. But that did cause stress.
Yes.
So we were on those things. I bet we rode yesterday. We definitely rode for over 10 miles, maybe more like 12 or 15 miles.
Yep.
And I was feeling basically omnipresent stress
Definitely.
the entire time.
Yep.
There was no relaxed riding.
No.
Right.
I think I tried it once and almost tripped over.
Exactly. I have to be thinking about what my hand is doing on the... I told you, I have a hard time reminding myself to let go of the accelerator and I'm hitting the handbrake.
Yeah, different than... on a bike, you can coast and kind of look around and take in the scenery.
Right.
And I think eventually we'll get to the point where it's so funny to actually observe our own conscious incompetence.
Exactly.
Like yesterday I was absolutely... I don't know what I don't know what I don't know. There's a lot of videos we have to watch and learn.
Remind them what the stages are.
So you've got unconscious incompetence. You literally don't know what you don't know.
Okay, that was Julie when she was actually ordering these from Segway.
That's for sure. Yeah, I just thought they looked cool. And maybe they'd be a little faster than a regular bike and, whatever. And then you go into conscious incompetence. I am consciously incompetent. I would say that I'm deeply in that as of today. I know there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. I know
but
there's some
right
videos.
There, isn't that fun? Being in this stage where we are?
So that goes to your point that stress keeps you alive, right? So isn't it interesting that you can have exciting experiences while you also have, maybe even you could call it fearful experiences or nervous or whatever, that happens simultaneously. And we've talked before about the fact that this is why when you go on vacation, your vacation memories are so much more vivid, is because you're forced to be present.
Third phase?
Okay, so the third phase, and I know they all sound the same, so maybe write them down. Conscious competence. This is when you've learned some stuff, okay? This is when you've actually, read the instructions, watched some videos, and most importantly, practiced it, right? You can't just, at least for now, maybe there's people working on this, but for now, you can't just plug it into the back of your head like the Matrix, download some YouTube videos, and then, get up and do it. You have to actually practice some stuff, right? So that's conscious competence where you're getting better, but you still have to concentrate. Then you get to unconscious competence, which is like autopilot. And that's in this case, maybe like the guys you watch on motocross
racing,
competition where they can, not only are they riding it, but, they're flipping it in the air and they're not wiping out. They're not landing on their head, and they're actually competitive. That you can't just skip all the stuff and go right to that, much as people would like to.
And for doing this, being that it's strictly a hobby, I'm more than content just getting to the third phase.
Me too.
Truthfully.
I think that's better. Because, what does happen in unconscious competence sometimes is after you've been there for a while, you get complacent and then you can get lazy. And that's when people have accidents too.
Yeah, that's true. Because you stop feeling challenged. You stop
You're
paying
overconfident.
attention. You're overconfident. Well, so here's his examples. And again, the point being, we die from lack of stress, which again is completely different than what everyone preaches. And I always love contrarian advice because it's almost always true, especially when you think about how commonsensical what he said is. Yeah. So he said, if you don't continue to catch colds, your immune system won't improve. And if your immune system won't improve, that means you're more susceptible to die to things like, just normal things like that normal people would have the immune, right? The flu was actually his examples. But, and I got to thinking about that, and the other example he gave was bones, for example. He said if you're not lifting weights and you're not doing things that essentially keep challenging your skeletal structure, your bones actually start to weaken.
That's interesting.
Well, think about astronauts. I mean, one of the problems so when astronauts go on to space stations and just whatever they're going to do, and one of the greatest issues they have with long flights to Mars, these are all real issues, is your body actually starts to
atrophy.
I was going to say degrade, kind of the same thing.
Well, your bones and your muscles, I think.
And that was the other point he said. So if you're not constantly putting yourself under stress, your body actually, it does degrade. You'll lose muscle, you'll lose skeletal structure, your bones will start to break. You won't be able to pick up that slurping as Julie having her coffee. And if her muscles had atrophied, she wouldn't be able to pick up her heavy coffee cup. So these are all the types of things that's so obvious is the truth. And yet so many people not even buy into, they all are ultimately looking to return to this place of complacency.
Yeah, that's the default.
The couch, the mental emotional love seat basically is where they're always trying to head to. And you can see it manifesting itself in I put with quotes around this, business decisions that real estate agents will try to make with building their business. What they're trying to do is do anything but put themselves under anything that remotely resembles stress.
Yes.
And that's the reason that these easy button sons of bees are so easily successful selling stuff to you guys, because all they have to do is basically, tell you that their thing that they're selling you is going to somehow make it so you don't have to feel stress. I mean, that is the underlying message of every gimmick idea that's ever been sold to anybody. The easy button, that is what it is. And I don't like easy buttons and hacks. I don't like terms like that, because what they're they're either knowing or unknowingly lying to you. And the lie is that you don't have to put in the hard work and you can avoid the stress. And you have to know that. Intuitively, I know you know that because you learned to ride a bike, right? You had to fail when you competed in a spelling bee, and then you had to go home and practice. For Julie, she had to practice her butt off to become a world-class flautist and play in orchestras and soundtracks and whatever. So these are the types of things that I want you guys to internalize. Why is it you're trying so hard to avoid stress? And here's the funny thing as far as business building and making money. Everything that you want in life is basically on the other side of doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level.
For sure.
And if you make a list of the things that you're avoiding the most in life, all of those things are going to be the things that you perceive will cause you stress, might cause you discomfort, dis-ease, and dealing with fear, right? So all the things that would be the most valuable things. So on our clubhouse the other morning, I asked the question. What was the question again? It was my Monday question.
Was that the what would you do differently if you had it to do all over?
That was my Tuesday question.
The what do you do in your day that you basically hate the most but has the best benefit?
Right. And the answer to all of them, and this is a panel of people that I know, Julie and I know, love, and respect, all of them ended up saying the same thing. They all ended up saying they'd pick up the phone more often. Every single one of them. And look, guys, I'm not stacking the panel with just pure Tim and Julia loyalists and fans and podcast listeners.
Never heard from before.
Right. Some of the people were just people in the audience that raised their hand and contributed. And they all said the same thing. I would, in essence, do what I've been avoiding for, in some cases, decades, which is pick up the damn phone. I'd have real conversations with people. I'd put myself directly in front of people. I'd stop hiding out behind my digital device, right? Stop thinking that somehow the ones and zeros of the digital world are going to somehow result in dollar signs and ones and zeros in my bank accounts. It doesn't work like that. So the way that you make money ultimately is learning to master the art and science of doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level.
And I would add one thing to that too, Tim, just from a coaching standpoint, is that many people have written that it all stems back to fear of being out of control, or fear of not knowing what to say next, or not knowing what to do next. It's that fear of embarrassment somehow, fear of confrontation. All of it stems back to the same thing. So one of the things we do in coaching is we give you one simple script to unlock all of that problem.
But Julie, the thing that's always frustrated me about our business and frustrates me in general is that you can give somebody, there is definitely a bridge, and it is coaching, right? But there's the bridge between like our knowledge and what we give them as far as our coaching program. I'm 100% confident we'll solve their problems.
Yes.
Okay, with regards to real estate businesses.
If they do it.
Right. But that's the if they do it part.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that's always fascinating to me and I know, and I can sense it now intuitively, and Julie can too, and all of our coaches and all of the staff, everyone that's forward deployed and dealing directly with our customers, agents, they can feel it too. You can listen subconsciously. You listen for, their verbal cues as to whether or not someone's actually going to take action on the information, and it's if they're future pacing the action, if they're talking about doing it presently, if they're talking about goals but they're reluctant to drill down and hold themselves accountable to an action plan.
And they're literally their language too.
Yep.
Try it out.
Right.
See how it goes. See if it works. All of those nebulous words are a tell.
When you say those words and your subconscious mind hears you saying those words, your subconscious mind goes, well, Bob is obviously not committed to this particular goal.
Not going to do it.
Not going to do it. Bob's going to move his ass back to that Barco lounger as fast as he can. Bob wants to be comfortable and confident. Bob said, we're going to try out, learning how to be a listing agent. We're going to try out how to this or the other thing. That doesn't mean jack. So your mind is not locked into that particular goal. And actually, this is something else I wrote down for you. Let me try to find it. And you want to talk about one of your articles, or is it too off topic? It doesn't matter. It's Sunday.
No,
who cares if we have a topic or not?
Yeah.
This is a good one. I'm actually writing these points down for a future podcast. They don't spend, this in the topic, or at least what was motivating me, the prevailing thought for these points that I'm writing down was essentially, what is it that top performers, this title sucks, but what is it that top performers do that others don't?
Yeah.
And the next point I wrote down was, and again, guys, this isn't the end product. This is just I'm in the formulation stage of this outline for a future show. They don't, as top performers, top producers, successful people, whatever word you want to use, they don't spend any time looking in the wrong direction. They don't spend any time looking in the direction they don't want to go. And I'll tell you what motivated me for that. So 2 things. So I have a little bit of racing background. I've taken Skip Barber Racing School's SCCA license. I was eligible for, never actually got the license.
Yeah.
Julie and I have done some, organized
track
racing
days
in different cars. We've been blessed to be able to have Ferraris and Lamborghinis and things like that.
I would put Appalachian driving experience up there, even though it wasn't supposed to be a race day. You people sure acted like it was.
Yeah, that was awesome. And a GT3 RS. But in any event, so we've got background, and this is just something we do for fun. It's not anything we've ever actually focused on. And I did race go-karts and whatnot, and Julia actually helped me with that. Yeah. But the reason I've never really spent much time on it is because I know my personality, and if I were to ever actually go down the path of really wanting to be a race car driver, I would be obsessed with it, and I wouldn't be satisfied until I was actually winning races. And the difference between where I was always ending up in races, which was usually there's the top group, which is usually 3 people, and then there's the best of the rest, and then there's the people that shouldn't have been on the track in the first place.
That'd be me, trailing.
Exactly, that'd be Julie. I was usually in the middle of the best of the rest pack. That's right, and I was happy there because it was fun. I didn't worry about it. I wasn't really caring whether I had the latest equipment or gear.
It's the fun spot.
It was a fun spot. But I knew, and that's the same reason I've never learned to play golf.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd get obsessed with it and I'd be pissed if I wasn't winning. So, you know, but that actually works to another point that I wrote down. But here's what I learned one of the first times I was taking a class at Skip Barber, right? We were driving these open wheel race cars, and these things were going over 100 miles per hour, and they had no aerodynamics on them. I will not bore you non-car geeks.
And your class was in the rain on top of
Yeah,
it.
and it rained for 4 days, and so we were having to race and we were at Mid-Ohio, which is a hell of a hard track to learn on in the dry. And they took all the aerodynamics off these cars, which means they moved around constantly. They were sliding around constantly, but damn, it was fun.
Yep.
But I remember one of the first things they taught us was if you start to slide, which everyone was constantly. Matter of fact, in the history of Skip Barber,
I remember.
Our group wrecked more cars in that 4 days, maybe it was 3 days, than any other Skip Barber
the
class
most wreckingest class.
Yeah.
It's funny that you guys are all proud of that.
Yeah, well, it was hilarious. Carl, who was doing it with me, he wrecked,
remember.
3 or 4 cars?
I remember.
Like, balled them up.
I have some pictures of that. Yeah.
He was proud of himself. Matter of fact, I think he took some of the parts home.
I think so. His wrecks were like Pigpen from Peanuts in a car. You know, there's like stuff flying around everywhere.
You'd see this big poof of dust off in the corner.
That was Carl.
Yeah, that was Carl. But anyway, so one of the first things they teach you is if you're in a slide, don't look in the direction the car is sliding. Look in the direction you want to go. So I'm going to say that again because I want you to think about it. If you're finding yourself all of a sudden experiencing a bout of failure or something is not going right, do not concentrate on the place you don't want to go. Like when you're in a race car, you don't want to be looking at the wall if you start to slide because you will draw. Your subconscious mind will actually cause your hands to steer towards the wall.
Your hands go where your eyes are looking, right?
Exactly. And so if you wonder why you see so many people hit, like you'll see this, you'll be driving down a country road, lots of, pastures and open space and trees here and there. And yet when you come across a car accident, you'll see that the person somehow managed to hit the one tree that was within like 5 miles. And so you ask yourself why. It's because for some reason they started to slide off the road. Their mind went to, oh my God, I don't want to hit that tree. And their eyes went to, oh my God, I don't want to hit that tree. And their hands then went to, I'm going to hit that tree.
Well, you saw Zoe do it yesterday on her bike ride. She was headed right for the wall. I was behind her. I could see that she was looking at the wall. Wiped out, hit the wall, ended up in a ditch.
She did,
because
literally.
She happened to be looking right at and that's where her hands went.
Yep, and she was all balled up with her bike on top of her. It looked like, Zoe.
It looked pretty bad.
Yeah, well, you were behind us, right?
Yeah.
So you can only see from a distance. And she started to do her little baby routine, and I said, nope, we're not doing that.
But you taught her that to watch where you're looking.
I untangled her from the bike. I then basically put the bike back up on 2 wheels. And then, it has training wheels on it, but, we're going to do, I understand a lot of you guys told me about balance bikes. We have that too. So we put her back on the bike. I picked her back up and she wanted to start crying and doing her baby routine. I reminded her that she can't give up. She got back on the bike. And then before I let her ride again, I asked her why she actually fell into the wall, into the ditch. And she didn't know. I said, Zoe, you will always go in the direction in which you look. And if you're headed towards a ditch, you're going to drive into the ditch. And now, obviously, I'm trying to interweave into her little baby brain. Well, she's not a baby, but her little 7-year-old brain. I'm trying to get her to understand the psychology of winning and losing, of success and failure. Your brain and your body and your spirit and your soul will always go in the direction that you're concentrating on the most. And if what you're concentrating on the most is what you don't want, you will create, and I hate using this word, but it's an apt word to use, you will manifest in your life what you don't want. So if you're spending a lot of time focusing on what you don't want, 100% of the time you're going to get what you don't want.
Absolutely. So that's like, being not as financially stable as you maybe should be at this point.
You're too focused on basically pinching pennies, and you're too focused on being poor.
That's what you'll create.
You're too focusing on how to, basically live at a very, very low level. You're just going to manifest and bring to you more being poor. And trust me, you're hearing from 2 people who started out very, less than poor.
Yeah. Our weekly grocery budget was $13 a week.
Didn't we find that when
I
we
have
moved?
that somewhere. I think I have that in a scrapbook somewhere, one of our many moves. And I even had the grocery list. I remember this was when we were first married, maybe even before we were first married.
We got married in 1991, just to date that out.
Yeah, but still, even $13 a week was pretty shabby back then.
It was mostly ramen noodles.
It was because you could buy 10 for $1.
Yep.
Mac and cheese. This is probably how we gained 30 pounds when we started real estate. But
probably.
Noodles are cheap. Ramen noodles, mac and cheese.
Poor people food.
some sliced meats, and that, not a whole lot of, I think we got saltines for our soups.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for us, we didn't stay in that mode.
Yeah,
But,
no. Because that'll motivate you.
Right. Well, that's the whole point of being poor and struggling, is because you want to not be poor and struggling anymore.
Exactly.
So you're going to figure out how to be successful and rich.
Indeed.
Or at least ideally you are. But if you basically are constantly surrounding yourself with poor people, thoughts, and actions, you're going to stay poor.
Yeah, because we could have, instead of focused on moving up in life, we could have focused on how we could have gotten ramen noodles even cheaper with some kind of coupon or something.
Exactly.
And ruminated on that.
And that's what a lot of people do. I bet you in that little apartment complex that we lived when we first got married, I can guarantee
people
you,
still living there.
I bet you there are. And I bet you if we go back to that first house we bought when we were 22 and 23 on East Jeffrey, I bet you a lot of our neighbors still live there,
they are.
assuming they're still alive.
Yep.
Because that was a long damn time ago.
That's true.
Yeah. But I mean, so the point being is that really successful people do not spend any time looking in the direction that they don't want to go. And hopefully you guys can all internalize that, because that's really true. And you think about what draws your attention into the direction you want to go. How about this? Every damn thing.
Yeah. Pretty shiny things, sparkly things.
Exactly.
Dramatic things, because you don't live a media-free life.
Right.
That's another big black hole people fall into, right? That becomes confirmation bias, and you believe a certain thing, and then you go searching for that.
Did you read my notes?
Without my glasses.
Oh, you don't have. That's what I wrote down.
My big birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, media-free.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
Yeah.
So
that's a big one.
Our brains are linked, obviously.
Clearly.
We have one of Elon Musk's Neurolinks. We have them installed.
Indeed.
Yes.
But I think that's a big lesson, is that if you're concentrating on the wrong things, then you'll get more of that.
Well, but it really does take, and which is another point that I wrote down. Where did I write that down? These are good notes, right?
Yeah. I want to listen to that.
I was writing stuff for 2 hours straight this morning. Okay, there it is. Point number 4. Focus, and this is you have this.
Follow one course until successful.
Yes, and so very successful people, and I've always heard this, and you and I've always followed this approach. Is we are really good at very, very few things.
This is true.
Like, I mean, honestly, I bet you I'm good at a lot of things, average at pretty much everything else, but I'm really good, if I'm being really honest, with no more than maybe 3 things.
Yeah,
professionally.
I would agree for me as well.
Yeah, and that's what you're supposed to be. There was an interesting study done recently, and there's another one that maybe we can share with these guys about the correlation between money and happiness. But the big takeaway was one of the best ways for you to experience, I did share this with you last week, one of the best ways for you to be consistently happy is to be really good at 1 or 2 things and not a lot. And it was our good friend, I'm just making that up. I've never met him. Matthew McConaughey, who said basically life is what do you say? Life is
life is short. Be good at one thing.
Let me try to get it right. Give me a second.
Like
life is barely long enough to get good at one thing. Choose wisely.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great quote.
Right.
It's
so what
true.
he was saying is if you go from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other, you're never actually going to get to the point where you're any good at it. And that's one of the things that I think that is incredibly true. As when we moved here, and Julie and I live in Dorado, Puerto Rico, and we live at this this really amazing place, and we're surrounded by other entrepreneurs. And I promise you guys that the topics in which these guys and gals can speak with fluidity is virtually nothing. You will have friends that like to talk about this, friends that like to talk about that, and then as soon as you start meandering outside of what their wheelhouse is, they don't really have a lot to offer, at least not beyond a casual
but that's
perspective.
Okay, because we have very interesting conversations.
Yes.
We're also the same way, right?
Sure.
So you pick up lots of different things, but it is really nice to be surrounded by people that have, we have that commonality of going after those things that we're almost specialists at. And yet there's so many different things that people are good at.
To reach the level
cool.
that we are and our neighbors are, you are a specialist. You
better
have
be.
become a true expert. You don't live where we live. I mean, I bet you the average sale price of a home here, and thank God we didn't have to pay this, but I bet you the average sale price of a home here is it's got to be at least $4.5 million.
It may even be higher than that. Did you see the pocket listing for $9 million in estates?
No.
It's posted? Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah. So it's rising. It's literally rising every day.
The pocket listing in estates is listed by the developer?
No. By the agent, a friend of ours.
Which one are you talking about? Dorado Country Estates?
Yes.
Okay, so that house, you ready for this?
Yeah.
That house was for sale for $7 million.
I think it's the same one, yeah.
It's the same one. And now she's got it listed for $9 million.
Yep. Well, so just
Julie, that was only 3 or 4 months ago that we talked to her.
Well, here's a new phenomenon. You pointed this out in some of the North Carolina listings you were looking at.
Yeah.
And you sent me on a little trail ride into real estate about that. And
Yeah.
there are many instances in different markets, not just in North Carolina. This is a new thing. Sellers, listing agents will put it on the market, gauge by how many showings are getting scheduled, and then raise the price 2 or 3 days later.
Yeah, that listing I showed you in
That's
Murphy.
crazy, right?
Yep.
I mean, wow, what a hot market.
So this in Murphy, Julie and I have, those of you guys who are in North Carolina, especially around Murphy, North Carolina, even though we live in a blessed, beautiful place, so do you, and we're sort of jealous of you because it's some of the most beautiful forested areas and mountains we've ever experienced in our lives. So much so that we bought a little house up in Murphy. And what Julie's talking about was this house that was for sale for $369, and I showed Julie in the MLS, or on Realtor.com rather. I showed her that they raised the price by $50,000 or something.
Right.
And then there's others I've seen in the past where they're actually raising the price.
Well, and like our example in Dorado we were just talking about, why not see what you can get? So I don't know, but that just meandered into our expertise, right? Because we study this stuff.
So you want me to tell you? You want me to tell you funny?
Sure. Yeah.
Side point. So we've meandered. The point that we were talking about is focus, and we didn't stay focused on focus.
No.
And we started talking about real estate
because that's our wheelhouse.
I know, but that's true. But we weren't focused on the word focus. We just started.
Let's
refocus.
round the bend. Let's get back to that.
Well, but that is really the bottom line. I mean, in essence, basically, focus, being myopic, being really good at just one or two things really is the key to happiness ultimately. But do take Matthew McConaughey's advice and choose wisely. Because if you end up being good at one thing that no one else really gives a rat's ass about, i.e. they won't pay you to do or perform or buy from you, then you've really just focused on something that nobody cares about.
Well, the choose wisely is really critical.
If you ever want to have financial, why did Julie stop being a professional musician? Because there wasn't much money in it ultimately.
Yeah.
And there was not much freedom in it. And so
that it's same as like your racing analogy. There's only a tiny percent of people that make it to that.
Yep.
And so eventually I became content with being in that fun spot, like you, the best of middle pack of the best of the rest.
Right.
Because it is more fun that way. But there's a certain population that maybe that's their thing, and they became specialists at that. But business-wise, you better choose wisely.
Well, when I was into racing, really into racing, and I was good enough that I could have become on the top of the best of the rest pack, and maybe occasionally the guys that were the top guys, way more talented than me, and I never would have, but I could have probably gotten to the point where I started getting sponsorship if I'd stayed with it long enough.
Sure, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I didn't, because the conscious decision I made talking to other people who were on that path, like the guy, I remember this one guy in particular, and I did a Skip Barber racing school with him. He was in the same crappy car I was driving. He was so much faster than me. It's like the laws of gravity didn't even apply.
Well, because he had achieved that unconscious competence, probably.
Well, yeah.
He was flying a different ship because he had probably been around the track 5 million more times.
Well, he was flying the same ship, but he basically knew how to fly it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So the moral of the story is, and I got to talking with him, and I remember this, and he was saying, like, this is my career path. I want to, do this, do the other thing. And it was like the third time, to Julie's point, that he'd taken that school. He was going to try to get a professional ride. And here's the thing with racing is when you have a professional ride, you're paying for it. So when you see race car drivers that are racing, they're usually the ones that they're buying their seat. It's very, very rare anymore when you're watching a car race, really a lot of professional sports, where the person, the athlete or the driver isn't writing the check for his butt or her butt to be in said car. They have to buy their seat. Hopefully that's very clear to all of you guys. It is the very, very upper echelon that start getting paid to drive. And it's so few people. And then the amount of money it takes to go from being an amateur, as I was, to the point where you could actually have a shot at actually being a race car driver, the amount of money and the amount of time. And I remember having this conversation with Julie, and we were in our 20s basically. And, we were making money in real estate. We had the cash flow. I could have done it. There were different paths for it. I was looking into it. I was finding an engine builder, the whole thing. But then I started drilling down, writing down, okay, it's going to take not just every weekend, but then there's the weekend, then there's the time to drive to wherever the races are. And then there's the expense of the hotels, and then I'm going to have to buy this and the other thing.
Never mind the physical risk to your actual
I was
human body.
I was in my 20s.
Yeah,
I
didn't think about that much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I was just adding up all the time and dedication it would take just to get beyond being an amateur And then I was comparing it to what the opportunities would present themselves in real estate, and that was my breakthrough. It was easy for me to make a decision to, stay on task and stay, downrange and focused on helping people, making money, and building our wealth. Because I knew that once we had built our wealth and we had money coming in passively, where we were rich, where our money was working for us, we no longer had to work for our money. I could do whatever the hell I wanted to do with cars, and we did.
Yes,
and
but
we are.
this is really critical that you don't glaze over that. Okay, by you choosing the real estate path because you calculated it out, time, risk, money, effort.
Julie, you and music as well.
Absolutely. Okay, but here's the thing: because people get very distracted by the passion idea, right? So I better be passionate about it, or I'm not going to make any money at it. Not necessarily true. So the point you're making is, although we followed the real estate path, that does not mean that you have to break up with your, quote, passion, okay? You are still a huge race fan. You have awesome cars. You go on amazing drives, okay? I still am tuned into music. That doesn't mean that you have to have this big breakup and never go back to, what you're passionate about again. It actually makes what you're passionate about 50 billion times better.
You're actually reading right now. I just flipped my page over. You're reading my point 8.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I haven't read your
isn't that
point.
funny?
That's good.
But isn't that hilarious? Mm-hmm. And Julie, let me just read what I wrote down, and Julie's actually giving you the content for it, is they don't believe that they have to be passionate about what they're doing to be successful at it. And that is really...
That's huge.
That's one of the greatest lies. There's so many lies that have been normalized amongst entrepreneurs, business people, but all this bullshit that I see that's in the educational system now. Mm-hmm. And that being one of them, right? Follow your passion and everything will follow.
Sure.
Horse shit.
I think I've been thinking about this a lot too. And I did write about this in the Harris Rules book, where I gave my music example of me having that realization that it was okay to pursue something that wasn't like your original passion. Okay, so get the Harris Rules book if you haven't already. But
on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a bookstore near you.
Yes, indeed. So
called Harris Rules, over 400 5-star reviews.
Exactly. So sorry, we slipped into that. All right. So I think that it's a really big deal. I've been thinking about this, and I think that yes, somewhat the educational system does teach you that, right? Otherwise, probably they wouldn't have classes like basket weaving and pottery and stuff like that. And that's all good. And I have a cousin who's a great ceramicist, but she's also like an astrophysicist.
Yeah.
That's her real job. But I think that's a big deal. And I think when you're in your 20s, you're much more susceptible to that, because all of your 20-something friends are saying that to you as well. You want to drill on this, and
at the risk of being politically incorrect, you want to drill down on that?
I'm down if you are.
Oh, really? Well, let's see.
We won't take Sunday. It too far, but
this podcast usually has about a third of the listens as our normal one, so we can talk about things that are politically incorrect. These are the people that know, love, and care about us, so maybe they'll give us a longer leash to hang ourselves. Yeah. But really, if you think about it, the core issue with kids that are learning all this bad information about, essentially life lessons, the people that grow up not realizing that their quest should be to not be dependent.
Right.
In other words, be rich where your money works for you. You no longer have to work for your money. Independent, not be dependent, right? To be free of a job, free of the tyranny of essentially having to worry about money. The people that are teaching our kids and a lot of the popular philosophies of life are really deeply rooted in never being free or independent, because they're mostly rooted, and this is where I'm going to get on thin ice, and I'll catch shit for it if I do, on socialism. Mm-hmm. And that is the truth. They're built on the idea that the all-powerful Oz, aka the government, is going to always protect you, and that's where you should be living in servitude towards the betterment of everyone, with the idea that everyone is essentially like I'll tell you. Let me just drill down on this, okay? Because these are new thoughts. But so I'm listening to a book right now, and the premise of the book, and it's fiction. Yes, I listen to fiction books. Who cares? And the fiction book is about essentially what happens when AI, or they call it AGI, artificial general intelligence, when that becomes prolific. And the theories, and I've heard it and you've heard it, that many people are suggesting that's going to be within a decade or whatnot. And so the socialistic, sort of communistic type, communal-minded people are saying once AI kicks in, that there's going to have to be universal basic income. You've heard this before? Okay, you've heard that part because I forget the politician that was running on the Democratic side. He started proposing that. And so UBI. And so why is it that they propose that there's going to be UBI? Well, the technologists and the socialists are all basically, at the end of the day, under the belief that essentially, artificial intelligence, AGI, is going to somehow make most people irrelevant. In other words, AGI is going to be able to operate so much faster that most people, including people in, white collar type jobs, coders, computer programmers, all those people will become irrelevant because AGI will be able to replicate them fast enough. And in this book, it gave an example, which I thought was fascinating. So I'll describe this to you. So there was a, do you have on your Gmail, do you have the widget turned on that will predict what you're about to type?
Yes.
And then you can just hit tab?
Yeah.
Okay, that's AGI. So what AGI is doing is it's essentially paying attention to what everyone writes in email. Everyone on planet Earth, Google's artificial intelligence is studying what you're writing. And what they're studying and what the artificial intelligence is doing is it's learning how humans communicate. It's learning how you phrase things. It's learning how you tell jokes. It's studying, paying attention, emulating, copying. That's where this widget is able to then predict what you're about to type. Now,
and I'd say it's probably 90% accurate.
But truthfully, when it predicts what I'm about to type, what it predicts is better than what I was about to type.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Sometimes it's better.
It actually makes me look smarter.
More accurate, more grammatically correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what it's actually predicting that I'm going to be smarter than I actually am. So right now the AGI is making me look good, but you get my point.
I think it's more polite overall than most of us are sometimes.
Totally. It's more articulate. It's better spoken. Okay,
it's already spell checked.
It's already spell checked. I know. Throwing in the commas in the right places. No comma splice.
Yep.
My English teacher my freshman year in college called me comma splice as my nickname. Splice. Right. He actually banned me from using commas in a couple papers because he said he couldn't read them anymore because I didn't know how to use commas, and he was right. Anyway, so I do now, or at least it appears that I do because I have Grammarly, which is also an artificial intelligence thing.
Yep.
And Google. So anyway, in this book, they're talking about these people at a conference. And this founder, his name was Jeff Kim or something. Yeah, Jeff Kim. He's up on stage, and he's this Korean guy, and he's this he's this oracle type. He's kind of like Elon Musk is now. And he's up having this up on stage at, call it some, CNET type thing or some big tech conference in Austin, or they didn't say where. And so this lady's interviewing him, and what's happening is the transcription of what they're saying is appearing on the screen behind them. Neither one of them can see it, but the audience can see it. And what's happening is they're talking, and the artificial intelligence is then predicting what they're going to say a minute in advance of them saying it.
Wow.
So they're having this conversation just like what Julie and I are saying. Imagine Julie and I having a screen behind us, and this thing has listened and studied to Julie and I. It's read what we've written in the past, what we've read in the future. It's listened to all of our podcasts. It's studied. It absolutely knows how we communicate, especially amongst each other. And then it's able to predict what I'm going to say next, which is fairly simple. It's fairly easy to predict what I'm going to say next. I'm probably going to start bitching and moaning about branding or marketing.
And possibly about buying leads.
And buying leads and probably about teams and profitability. Sure. I mean, I'm pretty predictable.
Fairly, yeah.
Yeah. Those are my topics, right? Well, so this artificial intelligence thing in this book was talking about, so the words would appear in that they had said in black. And then the artificial intelligence thing would pop up, not just the concepts of what they're going to say, but the actual words and phrasing what they're going to say. And those words appeared on this, basically a screen in yellow. And when it was right, the words would then turn green.
This is pretty crazy.
And so the lady interviewing the Jeff character didn't realize this was happening behind her. And only the really attentive people in the audience, the engineer types, were knowing what was going on too. And so our main character was, his name is Colt, was in the audience not knowing what was going on. He's a CIA operative, by the way. So he is in the audience. And I did find out, Julie, that there's more CIA and FBI people that are undercover, in essence, spies in Silicon Valley than anywhere else in the world.
That's interesting.
And that's not just for the United States. There's also Israeli. Every country in the world has the greatest density of spies based in Silicon Valley because that's essentially where that's the technological front lines of everything that's going to come next. And so then the takeaway was that the artificial intelligence that this fictitious company had developed was able to predict a minute into the future. And so then
which is not a stretch to believe based on how our email AI is going, right?
Right. And so, but think about that. If you have artificial intelligence, I'm going back to our focus point. I don't even know how I got on this, but who cares? So it's Sunday, right? So if you can actually predict what someone's going to say a minute in advance, that means that you can actually then have, I mean, just think of all the different ways that you could use that for the sake of good and bad. You know, there's so many different, you could make crap tons of money if you knew what someone was going to say a minute in advance, just from, stock trading and things of that nature. Just everything in life, basically. If you had a window a minute into the future, well, so the moral of the story here is then how else can you use that technology? How else could artificial intelligence be used? What other ways could it be used? So the theory, I remember. The theory, and one of the theories in the book was, as people become irrelevant, which I can see, and frankly, in a lot of aspects of life, they would become irrelevant. Sure. But working with people to buy and sell real estate, emotional purchases, you're not going to ever tell me that some screen is going to somehow be able to convey enough emotion with, and somehow replace a human when it comes to a big stressful event like buying or selling a house. It will never freaking happen. Zillow, I'm sorry, it's never going to freaking happen. Oh, hold on, you already discovered that. That's the reason you got into the real estate brokerage business. They're now hiring agents. How about that?
Interesting.
Well, so in any event, the moral of the story here is that when you think about things like universal basic income and you think about all these other things, if you all of a sudden started receiving a very basic income per year, family of four, $50,000 a year, let's say, you're not going to want to lose that $50,000. Then all of a sudden, when anybody even remotely threatens to reduce your $50,000, you're not going to vote for them. And if anybody suggests that they're going to raise the $50,000, you're going to vote for them.
Pretty predictable.
Right. And so a lot of these futurists, these technologists, if their roots, their thinking and their approaches to life are definitely rooted in socialism, if not straight out communism. And one of the other recurring themes in this book, which is really fascinating, was they're talking about how these, it's sort of a dystopian book now that I'm thinking about it, but they're talking about how a lot of these technologists, they weren't just they weren't just giving this away. They weren't just providing this to the world and saying for the betterment of man. They were actually having conversations on how they can then put themselves at the top of the, top of the heap, and how they then can put themselves in control of essentially humanity, aka through the creation of this AI. In other words, interwoven into this AI, this AGI was going to be this new group of leaders who are going to run the world. Now, that is exactly what's freaking happening. I mean, truthfully.
Yeah. And
that's what people rally against these technology companies. And that's what, when you hear this, what's that thing that's been going around? The Great Reset. And you hear about, all these new terms and phrases. That's where it leads back to. But ultimately, what got me on this point, what got me on this point? One of you in the audience needs to tell me. It isn't the passion one.
I think it was giving up control.
No, but it was one of these points, and it was really good. But I guess really where I'm leading with this in my mind is that no one really wants you to be rich. Everybody wants you to stay dependent. Oh, now I remember.
Yep.
Everybody wants you to be dependent on the schools. Everybody wants you to be dependent on the government. Everyone wants you to be dependent. Everyone wants you to be in debt. Everyone wants you to be essentially beholden, because then in essence, you are an indentured servant.
Which is the reinforcement of complacency.
Right. And if you're an indentured servant, if you're worried about losing your job, if you're worried about losing your income, because that will result, because you have debt, losing your house. And because you have debt and you lose your house, then you might lose your family. You might lose your security. You might lose your ability to eat. You get how this is a
slippery slope.
This is a construct that's designed to keep you beholden. It truly is.
It is.
And being beholden becomes a lifestyle, and that's what a lot of people do. They age, and they still stay in this concept that they can never be independent. They always have to. Now, you're never truly independent. You always have a boss of some form, but the financial independence, that's what the point was. They strive, top producers, top performers, where is it? Oh, here it is. They create professional and financial freedom. They create personal financial freedom so they can focus on big picture stuff. That was the point that I was trying to make.
Well, having financial freedom does unlock your ability to have freedom in everything else that you need to do.
Yeah.
I think that's if we circle back to, our choice, for example, to pursue real estate, and then, after that financial freedom, still have the things that we care about that we could have pursued but probably not had. It's okay, but it is the financial freedom that allows you to do everything else that you want in life. And I think that on some degree, people make that out to be harder than it actually is.
Well, it's harder than it actually, that's absolutely true. Because it's not hard to basically have personal financial freedom if it becomes what you're myopically focused on.
Yeah, ultimately that's actually easier, assuming that you're following a path and you're focused and you don't give up and you become okay with some days of repetitious boredom because you're going towards something.
Well,
that's easier and faster than having the trepidation of financial insecurity for your entire life.
We could talk about this for hours because this is something, this particular topic is something both of us have passion about because it's one of those things that we wish everyone knew. Yeah. And we didn't know it with capital, knowing it. We do know it now. And the truth is, and this really is, it's a bitter point, but it's true. Nobody wants you to be rich.
That's very true.
It is true. Nobody wants you to be rich, especially the government. The government doesn't want you to realize consciously how much. It's not just your income taxes. It's all your taxes, your property taxes, your gas taxes, your food taxes. It wants you to be beholden. It doesn't want you to actually sit down and add up how much money you're paying every year in taxes.
Well, how about luxury tax and millionaire tax and billionaire tax?
I know.
Talk to people in Manhattan, see how happy they are with that.
And I know people are waking up to that because look how many people are leaving the high tax areas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but there's still, you move from California to Texas, guess what? They're going to get you on property taxes. It's in some areas over 3%. So the tax thing is going to keep you beholden. But really, ultimately, what's going to keep you beholden is your willingness to stay part of the system. Your lack of acceptance that you can be financially free. And once you're financially free, and the simplest of definitions, and this is part of our book, is your goal should be ultimately in your business, your output, your product should be profit. And with that profit, then you reinvest it into passive investments. And then with those passive investments then should be designed to produce enough income that you cover all your personal monthly overhead. Once your personal monthly overhead is covered, you never have to worry about your personal bills again in your entire life. And yes, you can create that. We talk about that in the last chapter of our book. But once you get there, then what does that open up? And here's the fascinating thing. None of you have an answer to that question, and it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I always think, I do go back to somebody like Elon Musk, right, who has so many different companies that are so radically advancing technology. How is it that he's a guy that can concentrate on all of that stuff and be a big thinker and create all of these things? Well, it's because he's not really worrying about paying his bills anymore, is he? He's got financial advisors taking care of that. I guarantee you that is not his prevailing thought, is how I'm going to feed my family right now.
I watched an interview with him after he sold his first I think he sold PayPal, I think. Mm-hmm. And then he was one of the founders of PayPal. And then he was talking about getting into, no, you know what? It was a company before PayPal.
Yeah, there was one before.
There was one before PayPal that he sold, and there was it was a fairly snarky, like CNBC, old school, like early 90s. He had, a lot of hair, for example. So Elon had a lot of hair, didn't have a lot of hair, and has hair again, modern science and all that. Mm-hmm. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. So he was being interviewed. The interview, what caught my eye, obviously, because I'm a car nerd, was he was taking delivery of a McLaren F1. And at the time, it was one of the world's most expensive, exclusive cars. Still is, honestly. These things now sell for like $20 million. So he's taking delivery in this normal residential area, in this normal residential street. His first wife is there with him, and they're doing this whole delivery. It's coming out of the back of the truck, and he is wearing the crappiest looking, ill-fitting clothes you've ever seen in your life. It is hilarious when you look at this. Anyway, so he was being interviewed and saying, this is what it's like to be in my 20s and da-da-da-da. And then the reporter asked him a question about, do you feel fear? And then he just went into this long explanation that he feels fear constantly, mm-hmm. that he's always focused on mitigating the risk. And that's a lot of his thought process goes through. How do I mitigate the risk so I don't lose what I already have? The point being is that guy went on to become the richest man in the world. So it does make sense to be, and most entrepreneurs that I know, mm-hmm. people think that to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be a massive risk taker. I would say that I have never met a very successful entrepreneur that was a massive risk taker. Never.
No, I think they're aware of it, like your point about Elon.
Yeah.
Which also brings us full circle to our original point.
But
stress keeps you alive.
But it's right, there you go. But it's a calculated mm-hmm. risk.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And it's managed, and you're not running away from it. You're dealing with it.
Well, so Elon, you say he starts a lot of companies. The truth mm-hmm. is he doesn't. He started Tesla, but he started SpaceX, so I guess those are big, right? Yeah. But then the solar panel thing, I believe they bought that.
Yeah.
And then there's the satellite thing. I believe he bought that.
But he still has, because he's financially massively independent, beyond the definition of that, he's able to do things like that.
Well, that's true. Yeah. That's true. He's not fearful of losing money and never getting it back because he has many different buckets of go to.
Multiple spokes.
But what he did also was he was buying into existing businesses that had proven staff, he was essentially buying an ongoing entity that was already successful.
Yeah.
And then with his money and his knowledge and his fame, frankly, he was taking it to the next level.
Well, and Richard Branson would be another example of that.
I don't think Richard Branson is a good example of that. No.
But he was one of the guys people always said, well, he's buying businesses that exist and making them better, like airlines. And
I honestly am
like
not that impressed with Richard Branson. So I'm going to share with you why. So Richard Branson was one of these guys that became very famous for being famous, right? In the 90s, right? The hot air balloons and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And people like Richard Branson because Richard Branson then went into this and he still is doing it, where he likes to appear that somehow his business success was attached to him operating on a higher spiritual plane.
Oh, I didn't know that part of it.
You remember when we were at that event back in 2007? He was on the teleprompter.
Yeah.
He wasn't saying anything practical and tactical.
Yeah.
He was just trying to seem like he was some sort of new age movement guru. He was even wearing this big white flowing shirt.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay. So that was just basically somebody that hadn't. Now, fast forward to last year when the pandemic hit. He was in front of the British, whatever the heck it was, the form of Congress, begging for money to keep Virgin Airlines alive. Did you know this?
I did.
And so he was, essentially, obviously under a lot of pressure and stress. And this was maybe mid-year, June or July. And he went to the government begging for money to keep his airlines afloat. And I remember somebody asked one of the, Parliament, I don't know what the hell it was, right?
Yeah.
They asked, why don't you, so Mr. Billionaire, what the hell? Why are you asking us for money? And he was asking for, I think it was $300 million or something. And then he said, I don't actually have any money. All my money is tied up in, like he said, for example, and somebody even said, why don't you sell your island or something? Or I forget what it was. Yeah. And basically at that point, he admitted that essentially he's tall hat, no cattle.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so the valuation of his assets. He said right now, I remember this too. He said, in essence, Virgin Airlines is worth nothing right now.
See, I didn't follow that strain.
So you compare him to someone like Elon Musk.
No, you're right.
Not even orbiting the same universe, honestly. I mean, they're completely different. And frankly, I'm not going to talk about former presidents, but same idea, right? When you look at people who have really created wealth versus people that like to celebrate the perception that they've created wealth, a lot of people become in love with their fame. It's the same thing that happens to realtors.
Yeah. Well, Branson might have made a good YouTuber back in the day.
No, originally he was fantastic, but look where he made his money. He made his money with Virgin music stores. Well, that didn't last as soon as iTunes comes around. And did he evolve that? Did he get into digital music? No.
Nope.
And so what does he get into? Airlines?
Yeah.
Airlines. Huh. Okay.
Especially during a pandemic. Oof.
Yeah. That wasn't a good idea. Not his fault, but still airlines. Sure. That seems weird. Now, Virgin, Galactic.
Maybe.
And so now he's competing against Elon Musk. He's competing against Jeff Bezos. And he thinks somehow he's going to be able to, those two gentlemen, between the two of them, what the hell are they worth? $200 billion or something insane? Maybe even more. And this
maybe
guy,
he's hoping to sell to them.
And he's having to go to the parliament or whatever and beg for money.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Virgin Galactic is not the horse I'd be betting on. But anyway, so these are the types of interesting thoughts that you really can start having when you start paying attention and you start being able to separate the wheat from the chaff, essentially. But yeah, so back to our original point, you grow from stress.
Yeah.
And stop trying to avoid it.
Absolutely.
I hope we caused these guys a little bit of stress today. What do you think?
I don't know what they'll do with it. We'll see. Send us some emails and let us know what you thought about today's show.
Send them to Julie. No, actually, that's a good segue to round the bend. Yeah. So I'm going to give all of you guys a little bit of stress. We talked about money. We talked about success. We talked about essentially your stress. Well, here, I'm going to intentionally put this in front of some of you guys. Ready? I'm going to be very direct. If you guys aren't taking a hard look at EXP Realty at this point, it's going to be your biggest regret. Honestly, it's going to be your single biggest regret. Because EXP Realty right now is on one of these growth curves I've only read about. I remember studying these sort of things in college, right? And I remember when the tech companies back in the early 90s, when they started going public, and you started seeing, they talked about this hockey stick growth. But what people don't understand is those hockey sticks, they can last generations. And the amount of people that are creating unbelievable opportunity for themselves and their families through EXP's multiple streams of income is like nothing I've ever seen before.
It is. And I think the only reason that you're not in pursuit of it is because you don't know the facts about it.
Because you don't want to feel the stress of
having new thoughts,
change.
Having to change. And I think there's a little resistance because the people that are involved with the EXP are so enthusiastic about it that kind of freaks out people that don't know anything about it, and it makes them feel confronted in a way until you actually get the facts, which you cannot unsee. And until you know about people, and there's tons of them, tons of examples of agents that are doing basically the same volume that they did with their other company, but realize that their income stream, if you will, was coming only transactionally from their old company versus doing virtually the same business, if not possibly more, because you have probably more freedom than where you're coming from, with 5 different revenue streams.
Let me tell it in a story, right?
Yes, that's the best way to do it.
On a clubhouse this past week, and Julie and I's clubhouses, we do them every morning at 8 a.m. It's not just Julie and
8 a.m. Eastern.
8 a.m. Eastern, right? So it's a panel of folks. We usually try to have the same, moderators, panelists, but I like to mix it up for variety. And man, some of the people that come into the room are just awesome. There was a gentleman last week that he was incredible. But in any event, these are not recorded, so it's FOMO in a real sense.
You're there or you're not.
You're there or you're not. So try to attend. It's called a Real Estate Masterclass. And then those are the keywords to look for. Or you can just search for Tim and Julie Harris, and you'll find the masterclass that way. Follow us, and then basically hit the little bell icon, and then every time we set one up, you'll be automatically reminded. But yeah, attend that. So what was I just talking about? I remember. So I had someone that was in the audience that came up on stage, and we were talking about passive income last week on this masterclass. And I never really try to steer it towards EXP. Oftentimes it gets steered towards EXP because people are so thankful and grateful for it. Well, she came up on stage and she started talking about the fact, and she's 55, and she started talking about the fact that she had struggled with money her entire life. She was a single mom, and she'd always been fearful of just all the normal things that cause people financial stress. She's fearful of not making her house payment, of not being able to feed her kid, not being able to, just all the financial things. She never thought in her lifetime that she would have any sort of financial security because her whole life was basically transactional income. She'd been in the real estate business for basically her whole life.
And making a decent living. This is not somebody that was just doing a deal here and there.
Yeah.
This is kind of common agent stuff.
Right. She'd have successful years, and then maybe she wouldn't keep her taxes back up, and then all the tax zombie would come and knock on her door and then chase her around until she paid that off, and there would go her savings, and then there'd be an unexpected bill here or there. So her whole life was this constant feeling of stress to the point where it was normalized. And that goes back to my earlier point about how everyone assumes that being dependent or being stuck in the machine where you're never financially free, that just becomes normalized because everyone else around you is the same way. Well, she was that exact way too. Now, here's what EXP had done for her. Not only was she making more money because her commission split was less because EXP is, unbelievable. It's $16,000 cap. Some of you guys you don't even know what you're paying, but I had someone I was talking to about EXP on the phone, and he and his 2 assistants had paid to their broker the previous year $330,000 and didn't even know it because all the little clever ways the fees were disguised versus $16,000. I mean, that was
not even comparable.
That was the easiest sponsoring experience I think I'd ever had. It's like, guess what? If you never do anything with revenue share and you just sell what you sold last year, I'm going to give you a raise of over $300,000.
Yes.
Actually, I said, if I can show you how I can increase your income without working any harder by $300,000,
which is real,
would you switch over to EXP in like the next 5 minutes? I said yes, and I showed him the math, and he was shocked because he'd never done the math. This was last week. So anyway, she is then telling her story, and she doesn't have a lot of passive income from EXP. It's like $4,500 or something per month, right? So she's making $4,500 per month. May have been 35, may have been 52. I don't remember. Because here's what happened. She started telling this story, how her whole life had been in one form or another of struggle. Sound familiar, a lot of you listeners? And now what her experience is having enough personal income that she has the financial security that she never had. And she went in to talk about how when she grew up, her parents, or actually she came from a single mom too, how her single mom too never had any money. So her entire life, since the day that she set her tiny little feet on planet Earth, has always been about financial insecurity, always been about scarcity. Always been about, that's just how
she had come to believe that was how it was.
That was
to be.
normal, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that had become normalized. All of her friends were that way. Her family was that way. And now what was amazing, to the point where she started to cry, is that she had enough money coming in that she was maybe $1,000 or $2,000 away from having all of her bills personally covered every single month. Is she could not believe the amount of stress that she'd been experiencing for 55 years that she was able to let go, that she now can see in her rearview mirror because the revenue share she's making from EXP Realty. Everyone in the room basically knew it. Some people started to feel emotional themselves.
And this is without selling, I think, a significant more. This is not because of increased volume.
No.
This is because of a different model.
Well, she basically, she had I think she sponsored a handful of agents, and they sponsored a handful of agents. And
yeah, but in terms of her transactions, she's basically running her real estate practice basically the same way.
Yeah, she hasn't increased her volume. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's created this passive income. But here's the thing that, I mean, I'm happy, and I'm a little bit angry, and probably a little bit, I hate to say, jealous. Mm-hmm. But if EXP Realty had been around when you and I first got married, and we started, our North Star was to essentially have enough passive income coming in off paid off rental properties.
Yep.
That we wouldn't have to work anymore. And we did accomplish it by the time we were 40 and 41. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I won't say how many years that is ago, because then you guys will know how old Julie is.
Stop doing the math.
I won't do that. Okay. And so, and we accomplished it. But it wasn't Shangri-La.
No.
Because rental properties are vacant. You have to manage your managers, the whole thing. But it took us 20 years, basically, more than that.
Plus a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, to get to that point. We could have gotten there faster if we'd sacrificed more, truthfully. But trust me when I tell you, listeners, we sacrificed a ton. We didn't have the lifestyle we could have had. We didn't have the houses we could have had. We didn't have the experiences we could have had because we were staying true to our North Star. We were sacrificing in pursuit of being rich where our money worked for us and we no longer work for our money. And we did it. And we became millionaires. Well, actually, we became multi-decamillionaires, if you want to know the truth, from having sacrificed and lived that. Now, we had a couple good cycles, wind at our back. I mean, the greatest real estate seller's market in the history of humanity, and more inflation appreciation over the last 15 years has definitely been a good thing for us. But here's the thing that I realize now. If we are getting into real estate now, and it doesn't matter what our age is, I would not be attracted to buying a single rental property because of EXP's revenue share.
Definitely not.
Because it took the gal I was just talking about to get to the point where she's making whatever it was, $5,000 or whatever, 2 years.
I know, 2 years.
2 years. So she basically in 2 years is able to create $60,000 roughly in passive income per year. I want you guys to think about that. Just to put it in perspective, for you to have $5,000 a month passive income, you have to have, are you ready for this? You're going to have to own properties that cost between no mortgage, properties that cost between $175,000 and $200,000 paid off. You're going to have 5 of them that are rented at all times paid off. So you're going to have roughly $1 million or more, really, in paid off rental properties to make $5,000 net profit from your rent from those rental properties. I'm going to say it again because it's incredibly important you get it. I give you $1 million. You go out and buy 5 rental properties in the normal parts of the United States. You can buy 5 properties for $175,000 to $200,000, single family homes, and those will definitely produce $1,000 net. That's after taxes and carrying costs, assuming you don't have big HOAs or association fees, assuming you don't have roofs that need replaced.
And you bought smart. You don't have a bunch of vacancy or crime.
Exactly. You're going to make on average $1,000 net for every paid off rental property, paid off, no mortgage, that's worth between $175,000 and $200,000. What's the probability of you saving $1 million after tax? Listeners, I'll give you the probability, less than none. Because the amount of money you would have to earn, considering your personal bills, think how long it would take you to save $1 million net to actually accomplish that.
Yeah, never mind the hassle of actually finding properties like that,
right,
competing to get them, negotiating, doing the repairs, all of the surrounding stuff. It is basically less than none. Now, especially in today's market, it's even harder.
We've been buying for 20 some years, right? So not all of ours cost that much. A lot of them we bought originally were around $100,000, $85,000.
Sure.
So we were buying back when we were in our 20s. And still own those properties, but nowadays those properties are worth over $200,000. A couple of the properties,
most of them over $3,
which is insane. It just is insane.
Yeah.
But if I bought for Julie and I bought for a cash a $300,000 property in one of our hunting grounds in Central Ohio, I promise you right now that damn thing's not going to net us any more than $1,000 a month.
No, because the rents don't keep up with the increase in price.
Right. So again, interesting.
And also, by the way, I have 2 chimney repairs this week, so there's that. The ongoing drama of owning property.
Well, okay.
Yeah, with EXP, you
Yeah,
don't
we have
have to do
properties
that.
in Texas too. Wait until the thaw. Think
I
of all the
know.
problems we're gonna have with those
Frozen
properties because of the
wells
exactly.
I know, it's bad.
So the moral of the story here is we're giving you the best suggestion, call it advice if you'd like, we possibly can. If you are not involved in EXP, if your goal is to be free, where your money works for you, you no longer have to work for your money. If your goal is to be like this gal I was just describing to you, that you can finally get out of the boiler room for life, then you have not very many choices, truthfully. I mean, maybe you've got a rich relative that's going to kick the bucket. Well, there's that. Good luck. Right? Hopefully, you're going to get what you think you're going to get. I think that's
not
more
predictable or duplicatable.
That's more hopium than it is anything else. But you're going to have to, buy investment properties, or you're going to have to figure something else out. Passive income is the best source of passive income I've ever come across are dividend-paying stocks. Again, you have to have millions of dollars in dividend-paying stocks in order to live off the cash flow. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. Not going to be a source that any of you are going to be able to count on in this lifetime. It is a spoke, but it can't be the source. EXP's revenue share model, especially when you look at where this company is in its expansion mode, is extraordinary. And if you're not taking it seriously, this is the thing that you guys have been looking for. I'm 100% confident that this is the thing.
Dude, we would not be involved in it if that weren't the case. We do tend to study. Yes, I called you dude.
Yeah, you did. But
seriously, I mean, wouldn't you say at this point, because we're well past what is EXP? Okay. Yeah. At this point,
except people, everyone knows what EXP is now, right? Okay. Versus 2 years ago.
So like 2 years ago, it could be forgiven because you were still, investigatory state and it wasn't really a thing.
Well, she means you listeners, not me. I mean, and Julie. So when I was Julie and I were talking to people 2 years ago, that was the number one question. What's EXP?
Yeah, no more. Everybody knows now.
And everyone now, most people want to join.
Yes. So really, wouldn't you say at this point, the only reason you wouldn't is simply because you don't know enough about it?
Yeah, lack of exposure.
Yeah.
Right. In just really drilling down, the biggest mistake people make, totally self-serving what I'm about to say, but totally true, is they choose the wrong sponsor. Yeah. They choose somebody that's not going to shepherd them through the whole process, and then you join. You don't have a sponsor that's sponsoring. If you don't have a sponsor that's actually sponsoring people, you have somebody that you're going to be one of their handful of people they've sponsored. Why would you choose that person to sponsor you? You want to choose somebody. Now, they might be great and they might be on the ascension. They might be on their way. I'm not, bad mouthing them. I'm just saying you've got to be really, really careful that you're going to choose a sponsor that's sponsoring or a group of people, just choose wisely, guys.
That are supportive of you.
Yeah, because you're going to start on this journey hoping to build revenue share, and you're not going to have been surrounded by the people that are going to help you create that the quickest. So ultimately, if you're serious about being financially free, the model of EXP Realty is like nothing we've ever seen before. Now, there might be opportunities like this amongst really, really wealthy people, but that were born with it, but that ain't any of us, is it? So this is, in my opinion, EXP is the last best business opportunity, not the last business opportunity, but the last best business opportunity that pretty much every one of you listening will ever have. Julie and I as well. So do the smart thing and at least take it seriously. I would love to talk with you about EXP Realty. I would love for you to consider us as your sponsor at EXP Realty. It would be our honor to be your shepherd down the path. And so all you've got to do is text me directly at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206, and I'll get you started on the journey. At the very least, I'll answer some of your questions. And if you're already far down the road with somebody else about them being your sponsor, have the conversation with them and have them sponsor you. I'm not trying to induce you away from somebody else. I'm just asking you to take the opportunity seriously, move faster, and by all means take it seriously, because this is what many of you have been looking for, most of you have been hoping for.
That's right. So take action. Don't just, go on with your day and do what you've always done and say that was a nice little session that was entertaining. Our aim is to move you forward in life faster and to be motivational, hopefully inspirational, educational, and show you a path forward that maybe is faster than what you might have done on your own. We talk all the time. It would have been awesome if we had some mentors along the way, certainly. But, some of the opportunities you guys have now are just so outrageously better that not taking action on it really is irresponsible. I truly feel that way.
We didn't have anybody like us.
No.
We didn't. We looked for somebody like us too. We did all kinds of looking to find somebody else somebody like us to sponsor, to basically mentor us.
Back when there were shadow days and things
Shadow
like that,
days, and we listened to different gurus and self-proclaimed experts. And I think actually that in pursuit of some of these expert guru types, we learned basically that most experts and gurus are fake.
Yeah, so it helps us to try to be as authentic as possible.
Right. So it wasn't for nothing. Yeah. Oh, you said try.
Oh, I shouldn't have said that. To be as authentic as possible.
That's right.
Nice catch. That's right. So guys, do something with this. Don't be passive about it. Be passionate about it. That's better.
Yeah, that is the bottom line. Be passionate about, if you want to know what to be passionate about your potential. Be passionate about your future. Be passionate about what you can do for yourself, your family, your community. Be passionate about what can come on the other side of no longer ever having to think about money anymore. Be passionate what it actually would feel like to wake up every single morning not worrying about money, knowing how all the bills were paid. Where would your focus go? And here, don't be scared of the fact that you don't have an answer to that question. If you're anything like Julie and I, which I know pretty much all of you are, that you don't come from rich backgrounds, you don't know what comes on the other side of the struggle. But I promise you, when you get to the other side of the struggle, assuming you pursue the idea of being rich where your money works for you, you no longer work for your money, your mind will happily find something to do.
Yes.
It'll be more constructive. And if you want to go back to more creative indulgences that are not necessarily in servitude of earning money, well, you have more time for those activities. But chances are what you're going to discover is once you have passive income, your passion is going to gravitate towards how to be of service to more people faster at a higher level. And then you're going to by essentially a side stream benefit, actually create more wealth, because you're going to love the feeling of being independently wealthy yourself, and you're going to help other people want to accomplish that same goal. That's where most of you will gravitate towards, and that's where you're supposed to gravitate to. At least that's my belief.
Yeah, well, so I think you're reminding them that the things that you do in your more financially free future could even be things that you haven't thought about right now, because you're not allowing yourself to think about it because your brain is full of thinking about struggle.
It's so full of struggle and fear, really, and then trying to nerf yourself up. Right. But once you've essentially moved past that, what's on the other side of that, this sense of freedom. It is freedom too, guys. Let's not mix words here. Being financially free, no longer being dependent on a political party or a job or an economic system or interest rates. I'll just end this one thought. What wouldn't in your life change? What would in your life be the same if you were financially independent and financially free? Would you vote for the same person? Would you think the same thoughts? Would you live in the same town? You're all of a sudden, you've got enough money coming in that you never have to worry about money again. What wouldn't change? I bet you that every single one of you would get in better shape if you no longer had to worry about money. I bet you every single one of you would start being a hell of a lot more gratuitous and demonstrative of your appreciation for other people. Every single one of you would become better humans because you no longer had to live in that constant state of fear, that constant state of dread. When you can move from doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level, and all of you have to stay in that mode 90% of your time, you never can get completely out of that mode. But when you move into doing what you want to do when you want to do it at the highest level, when you can do that 90% of the time, and you can do the doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level only 10% of the time, that's the magical part of essentially, that's the payoff. That's what you're working towards. Any thoughts on that?
Let's go to the beach. Speaking of which.
Yeah, let's go to the beach. Amen.
That's my thought.
Is the house munchkin bothering you again?
I don't know. She's strangely quiet.
You know what's hilarious is did I tell you she's starting to text me on your phone? You know
I know.
that.
I know.
And she sends me emojis and stuff.
Yeah, she says it's time to text Dada.
Yeah, you know how strange it is to get a text from your 7-year-old daughter who just like you. It seems like yesterday she didn't even know how to talk.
I know.
And now she's texting me.
But you know what? It's bringing it back to the AI. Some of her texts are that much more accurate because she's learning to spell because it defaults to the word she's trying to spell. Isn't that interesting?
It is helping people learn how to spell better. I'm learning how to.
Yeah. I think she definitely reads better because of the default that it's taught her.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So maybe if we're lucky, AI will replace us. Of course, here's the thing.
How do you know it hasn't?
This is AI.
Signing off.
Brought to you by Tim and Julie, Artificial Intelligence.
Exactly.
Tim and Julie have been at the beach for the last hour.
That's right. I'm going to go check on them.
I'm going to go check on them. You guys have a fantastic day. Remember, not our normal show. So if you thought we were crazy today, don't write us off. Real Estate Coaching
Back
Radio.
to normal tomorrow.
Real Estate Coaching Radio is the number one listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States and maybe the world. We can't be for sure about that one, but the United States we are. So thank you to all of you for helping us accomplish that goal and keep that true. And please do remember, get our book, Harris Rules. It's going to be the North Star that you guys have all been searching for. I do not care if you've been in the business a million years. It's especially relevant to you because you need to remove all of the, essentially the old, outdated, bad software that's floating around your head that's causing you stress. It's bad stress. It's causing you, frankly, to be broke. Causing you to struggle, and you don't even really know it because you've normalized it. So do read our book. I think it'll give you a lot of clarity. It's called Harris Rules. In the meantime, for those of you who are ready to move forward with EXP and you're looking for the right sponsor, it would be an honor to be your sponsor. Please feel free to text me at 512-758-0206. 512-758-0206. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you on the show tomorrow.